So before I even started football in a club, playing football in a club, I had endless hours of playing football with my brothers and the local kids where I grew up. We made rules the way, anyways, for whoever size who was there. And we always tried to make it fun. So if you made a great win, you could get 1 minute in the strawberry field, eat it all you can kind of thing. And then school happened, and football clubs. And I love school, and I love playing football. But it was like all the rules were suddenly set. And I love getting jerseys from my aunt in Ireland that would say like Everton and Liverpool jerseys. But football was suddenly a men's game that you watched on Saturdays, and it wasn't what we were playing every day. So somewhere from I was 5 years old, where I was the co-CEO of sports with all the other kids, to into my teens, I no longer owned sports. And I was definitely no longer the CEO of it. So 20 years later, being a pretty hardcore feminist, and being asked by the Danish government if I could find ways where we could make more active images of women in media, and suddenly my own daughter wanted to play football, I kind of looked and turned and looked at what is the state of women's football right now, and got this immense sense of saying, God, we should be able to do better. For the 30 million women and girls around the world that play every day but don't really get recognized for it. The fact that women or girls down to age 12 are playing with the same size football as men, and thinking, when we are heading, the head acceleration that we have when we're heading to a ball is above the level where we can get concussions. And there's a 90% chance that women will have their second big injury by the time they hit 20, not even giving them a chance to reach the full potential in sports of playing football. And then for the 62 million girls that we're thinking right now in schools around the world who doesn't have access to sports, then alone, of course, thinking about the crazy pay gap. And then for all the women and girls who doesn't even play sports. So I think that made my inner child CEO burst out and saying, okay, we have to be able to do better. And we started creating football in refugee camps for women, and we started making these big 120 teams tournaments at music festivals, automatically giving us a huge amount of audience that was the best audience for these amateur women playing. And I'm a film producer, I was at the time, and I took the savings from a film that I made, and I asked some scientists to calculate, what should a football really, the size and the weight of a football really be for women to play with it. And fair enough, it turns out that we are forced to play with a size 5, and that 5 only fits 7% of women in the world of football. So I became kind of a co-CEO of Women's Adjusted Sport in Denmark. And when the UN, they launched the 17 global goals, I think there was a whole bunch of us that looked at each other, and it was written in, we weren't written into the goals, sports, but it was written that sport has the potential for driving change, and of course also with Mandela's famous quote for saying sport can change the world. So all of us, many of us, looked at each other and said we have to be smarter for the world. Not only just in the countries, but also across countries and across, borders and sectors. And that made us make one of our footballs with all the global goals icons on it as the first, perfectly fitted to fit female players. And then we went to the UN and made an agreement of saying, let's, in trying to make this famous, make a World Cup that has the focus of the global goals. So global goals is vulnerable, or sport is vulnerable to the, about the global goals, because if we don't succeed, sport is going to be doomed, because people are not going to be able to go on a field if it's flooded. And we're not going to be able to show up if we're hungry. And we're not going to show up if we can't afford it. And also if we're living in conflict situations. So sport has and should be, a big driver in making, good lives for everybody. So that made us, trying to see focus on Global Goals World Cup and trying to make new rules. Let there be activism. That's what we say in our office all the time. So we made 4 rules. So every time, a team play a game, they get these points. They get points for most scored goals, for most supporting crowd, for most original team style, and for best actions for the goals. And having creative style and speaking up, having a crowd point is, of course, if we have to reach the goals by 2030, we have to be creative. We have to think creative solutions, and we definitely have to speak up. And for us, of course, using football, as Nietzsche, he said that never ever trust an idea that wasn't done in movement. And then, of course, taking action for goals. So when a team sign up, they pick one of the goals, zero hunger, no poverty, gender equality, and they activate for that goal. So they get points for cleaning a beach, reducing or coming up with solutions for plastic, for finding ways to reduce food waste. And this team, they decided to play for life below water. And they picked up a bunch of school kids and started cleaning the beaches in Dubai, and realized that there were so many cigarette butts being thrown on the beach. In just a few days, they had collected 300,000 cigarette butts, and they ended up making these beautiful art pieces of cigarette butts shaped like sea turtles, and went to the government and said, listen, our sea turtles are dying in the ocean because of this. And the government changed the rule. So now you get fined for throwing cigarette butts on the beaches in Dubai. These ladies from Kenya, so they come from a big Kenyan company, and they had the talks within the company about gender pay gap. And they realized that having those conversations are not necessarily easy conversations. So they invited players and women from all around, from the slums and from other companies, both to have games, but also talk about what were some of the solutions and talks that they've been going through to do, to reach or to close the gender pay gap. So, do I think, in a sense, that we have a fair chance of creating a World Cup in the world of World Cups, where it's a World Cup for the world? If we can convince all women that this is a tournament for them, then there's definitely a very interesting change, and that is that if a mother is active, there is a 98% chance that her child will be too. And that in many ways, in a sense, could limit some of the fears that we have right now about all the big health issues around in the world. But we have to convince them, because I don't think that there's many women around the world, they don't necessarily trust sports. And so in a way that we have to find a way where they fall in love together with us for sport, for them to join in. But then I think that we have a super fair chance to actually be a game changer in World Cups for the world. So far we have had 2,000 women have played in our tournaments. We have had World Cups in 9 countries. That means that these teams have taken 20,000 actions for the global goals. And we have, of course, because we promised to make it famous, so we try to be strong on the media side when we do our events, and we have a reach now close to 1 million or 900 million media reaches. Of course, I will also say that this also helps with when people like Pele and Kelly, his daughter, shows up and activate together with us. And of course, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, who is Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, that he shows up, and he shows up with his daughters to our tournaments, and he refs the games. But these are some of our teams, and I see now that after these last 2 years where we've been playing, that our teams are getting strong activists in their local communities. And I have this vision that maybe in the future, not so far away from now, these women will be the ones on the billboards, Times Square kind of thing, for the activism that they have done, for, you know, playing it big for gender equality and climate change, and being good human beings, the best human beings that they can be in the world. This way, I think, women have a chance to come back to co-CEO the world of sports. So for a thought, for all of you here, oh, this is football cards. Yeah, so when we have football cards, you give a sense of, you don't score for what you score on the field, but you score for laws that you have changed, actions that you have taken, of course. But give it a thought. If you were going to play in a Global Goals World Cup, what are some of the goals that you would play for? You know, quality education, peace and justice and strong institutions, life on land, gender equality. Think about it, we're all in this together. Thank you.